deep in the pit of depression, does God see you? Even more so, does he even care? You know, Job was on top of the world. He was respected, honorable, had a great marriage, healthy kids who were pretty much on their own, a successful businessman, a community leader, a fair manager, employer. Job loved to work with entrepreneurs. Their youth, ideas, questions, and innovations excited him. Until one day. Without warning or provocation, a bordering rebel faction attacked Job's community. In an instant, everything was gone. A few well-placed missile shells leveled his compound, along with a good portion of the town. Devastation surrounded him, followed by an eerie silence. As he wandered among the devastation, he tried to assist wherever he could, but when the first responders arrived, he wandered to the edge of his complex, only to see the surrounding area smoking under more rubble. Running as fast as his injured leg would allow, he approached his home, where he found windows shattered and part of the roof caved in. He screamed for his wife. Ripping away the debris, he heard her faint call. As he crawled over the collapsed porch roof, he saw her. She was alive, but pinned under a table very awkwardly. Well, more than 24 hours later, Joe and his wife learned that all 7 of their children had been killed. Now, I'm not making this story up. This story happened several thousand years ago to a man by the name of Job in the Bible. If it could happen, and it was bad, it happened to Job. He had it really bad. Throughout that book, we watch him wonder what God thinks about his state of affairs. We see that he's depressed. To top it all off, Job's wife told him to curse God and die. I used to think she was some kind of a woman who wasn't very faithful. But when I was recovering from my depression and I read the book of Job, it finally started to make sense to me. Job and his wife were suffering greatly from deep, deep grief and depression. There's phrases in the book of Job like, "I wish I'd never been born. Everything I feared has happened to me. I'm utterly helpless with no chance to succeed." You know, I relate to those. I related to those when I was in the depths of my depression. One of the lies the adversary wants to perpetrate in your life is that God could care less what happens to you. Satan whispers questions to us like, "Didn't God say he'd always protect you? Then why did he allow this to happen?" You know, sometimes it's not hard to agree with that evil, misformed logic. Job asked God why. So I think I was in good company when I started asking the same question, and so are you. We get to the end of the book of Job, and we really want God to answer all those why questions, but he doesn't. Instead, he doesn't strike God doesn't strike Job dead at all. He doesn't even berate him for his depression and his grief and his questions. But what he does do is remind Job of his presence, his greatness, and his intimate involvement in Job's life. You know, the only way I was able to climb out of that pit of depression and to keep from jumping back into it every day is to run to God. I have to do that today. So what does God think about your depression? Well, on my blog over at KirstenDSamuel.com, that's Kirsten, D as in Diane, Samuel, Samuel, no S on the end, .com. I talk about some reasons why God cares about your depression, but today I'm only going to talk to you about one of them. And this is one that really meant the most to me, and that is that God desires to journey with you toward wholeness. When I realized that God was in the midst of my pain, I was reading through the book of Psalms, and Psalm 40 gave me new hope. It says, "He lifted me out of the pit of despair, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on solid ground and steadied me as I walked along." That key phrase, "as I walked along," meant that God was with me. He didn't just let this happen to me. He didn't see me in my depression and say, "Oh, that's too bad." He hung around. He walked with me as I began my journey toward wholeness. But you know, the enemy continued to taunt me that God wouldn't do that, that he would walk away. Satan wanted me to think that I was hopeless, that I was too far gone to be restored. But that's not the truth. The truth is God was with me every step of the way. Your depression, like mine, may not recede overnight. It could recede more quickly than mine did, and I hope it does. But the decision to become whole was a one-step-at-a-time journey that I took with God. Many days I leaned heavily on him to take the next step. I couldn't even walk on my own. And you know what? That's okay. Each time I pushed into him, each time I reached out and grabbed him, I felt his strong arms support me. In those times, I asked him to show me something just for me, and he always did. There were small things every day to let me know he was present with me, and I was never alone on that journey. So what does God think about your depression and mine? It's a perfect way to help you and me seek him and find hope, restoration, and peace in his presence. As I run straight into his arms, he changes my perspective. He teaches me to praise him for the small victories today, to look beyond the depression. Well, if you're in the pit, please reach out to someone who can help you. It's dark down there, and the sides look too slippery, impossible to ever get out. I know, I've been there, but I did climb out. I'd love to help you get out. You can hop over to my website at KirstenDSamuel.com and click that free consultation button. I'd love to encourage you. There's zero judgment, zero condemnation, because I've been there. Together, let's reach out to Jesus and walk with him toward wholeness. Until next time.